All right, all right. It looks like all of the channels are live, so I'm excited to be here talking to all of you again today, Wednesday, March 11th, actually. And here in Chicago, I had to change my wardrobe selection out because it was 70 on Monday and it was snowing this morning or this afternoon. So I am in my bulkiest sweater again to try and stay warm. It's good I haven't packed them away, right? So you all know what I'm talking about. Chicago weather, what do they say? Something like if you want, um, if you're looking for a change in the weather in Chicago, just wait a minute. It changes that quickly. I couldn't believe it because I drove down into the city to go to a luncheon earlier today. And I just wore like a light jacket. And by the time I came out, it was sleeting. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to get in my car and crank up, turn back on the heat seater, turn on the wheel heater, crank up the heat because winter is not gone yet. So but I'm glad to be back here in my home office talking to all of you. And for those of you, if this is your first time seeing me, my name is Lori Swanson. I'm the CEO of Inspire Tech. We are a career wayfinding coaching school and community. We have lots of things happening regularly, and you can Oh, I don't even have the right background on, so I can do that really quick. I want to make sure I put the QR code for you all so that you can find me. And I think I'll do Career Alchemy Academy because that's really the place to be, is a member of Career Alchemy Academy. We have women from all across the United States and uh, we right now I think they're all east to west coast. We might have also someone from Toronto, but we've also had England and in India before. So because we're virtual, you can join from wherever you are and get weekly coaching and inspiration and and then co-working time and invitations to special events. We have a wealth advisor coming in 2 weeks to talk to and answer all of the questions that people have around taxes, because it's that time, but also investing and planning for retirement and getting out of debt. Like nothing is off the table for this marvelous woman. Her name is Claudia Marban, and she will be if you're a member of Career Alchemy Academy, you will be able to attend that talk and get all your questions answered. So those are the sorts of things that we're doing. We're also sponsoring an event. If you're in the Chicago area and you see this before Thursday, tomorrow, the 12th, there's a free event and you could find it probably in my socials or just message me on LinkedIn, and I can send you the information. But it's Brenda Darden Wilkerson, the CEO of AnitaB.org, will be speaking in Naperville, Illinois at the North Central campus. And it's a free event, 5 to 7:30 p.m. We will be there. We'll have a table. We'll be passing out some cute decals and pens and just saying hi. So come if you can. All right, let's talk about today's topic. So I really loved this topic for a couple of reasons. First of all, I write a blog every week, right? And sometimes they come easily, and sometimes I'm like, I got nothing. And so this was one of those times. But what I've come to know, and I'm getting goosebumps right now, is that, they talk about the muse, like, creative people, artists and painters and writers, and will have their muse that helps to deliver ideas to them and inspire them. And I really believe in that concept now. Because when I get to a point where I'm thinking to myself, I have nothing to write about this week for the next blog, and And then I will say, okay, muses, okay, spiritual board of advisors, specifically the creative writers on my team up there in wherever land. Um, I'm I'm all out of ideas. I'm looking for yours. And so, and then inevitably, and I mean every single time, uh, the idea has come. And I've seen this also with when, not only for myself, but for other people, when you feel like you're stuck between decisions. And then if you just allow, like sort of let go of trying to figure it out on your own, and you can specifically ask your board of advisors, your spiritual board of advisors, to download some necessary information in whatever form is, I will say, like fastest and easiest for me to access and very, very clear, because I can be dense, right? So make sure I'm aware that this is the idea. And in this case, I was listening to a story on the radio, and how I know that this is from my spiritual muse is that I get it, like I will get goosebumps sometimes, or I get a real um, like all of my senses, my spidey senses become alert. I can feel it. Something inside of me leaps and is like, this is interesting. And so that's where this idea came from today. And the title of today's talk is Your Career Coach is Your First Audience. Your Linda McCartney to your Paul McCartney. And so a first audience, this is what I learned, because I had never heard of that before. Or maybe I'd heard of it, but never, it just kind of was like one of those terms, but never really thought about it until, of course, I was meant to write about this. So your first audience is that person who hears or reads or sees the earliest versions of your ideas. And they are receiving them, however it is, seeing it, hearing it, reading it without judgment. So the first audience is just non-judgmental. They will offer constructive criticism, their thoughts. They'll ask questions. They will give encouragement, really important piece. They'll give encouragement. They will, when I think about first audience, and they will often kind of externalize what I've been thinking. So I'm going to turn my phone off because it's binging. I can definitely, like, I can sort of write a whole blog in my head, and then I'll say this, and then I'll say that, or I'll speak it into my phone. But it isn't until I get it written and then I let my husband, usually my first audience, my husband, read through it, or my assistant, that and even myself taking it out of my head and onto a page, I'll be like, oh, this is not working in the way that in my head it felt perfect, right? It felt done. It felt, like this is amazing. And then there's a point, when you get it kind of out of your head and into a plate, like either through your voice reading it to someone, or writing it and letting someone read it, or whatever it is, that that you become aware that it's not a finished product yet, and it's not meant to be, right? It really is the ugly first draft of something. So it will externalize what you've been thinking in your head, which giving it airtime, which is necessary so that you can see the shortcomings, I guess I'll say. It also, you get to hear yourself more clearly when you're sharing your idea with your first audience. You get to notice what is working and what isn't working, which is really important. You also build confidence through kind of the first iteration, the second iteration. So there's this repetition and refinement that goes on that helps to for me, I can feel something that's sort of out of balance start to come into balance, and then it settles in, and I'm like, yep, this feels good. And almost every blog, I kind of wait for that. I honestly always wait for that because that's when I know. And I'm going to say almost always because I know that there have been a couple times when I've forgotten about the muse. I've forgotten to ask for external support on the things I'm working on here in the earthly plane. And I just am like, oh, this is good enough, right? And I don't have anything against good enough. Sometimes I think good enough is actually good enough and things are ready for airtime. But I also know the difference between me just really impatient and wanting to be done with something when if I just gave it a little space. This is so interesting. I keep talking about airtime and giving something space, giving it breathing room, because inside Career Alchemy Academy, every month we have a touchstone. Last month was kindness. January was willingness. And this month it's the word air. And we're looking at it in a whole bunch of different directions, but very clearly giving something airtime and giving something space, like the air to breathe, the air to turn into something is really important. And I know that when I settle for good enough in a way where it's due to my impatience and my forgetting to engage my muse, my first audience, which is really my spiritual guides are actually my first audience. I guess my husband's my second audience. Because they really are my first audience. They're helping me to get the idea, and then they're helping me to as I find my way with the idea, especially writing the blog. It is this external source that's kind of nudging me, saying to me, that feels off, that feels right, keep going. Yes, take a break, take a pause, set this thing down. You need to give it a little airtime, a little space, and so that's really interesting. I never really thought about it, but my spiritual board of advisors, specifically, whatever that, I don't know how many there are. Maybe there are 20 that seem to work really, really well together. Or maybe it's only one with regards to the blog, but that being, that spirit is really my first audience. And I think all of us have that really is your first audience. But for today's purposes, we're going to talk about your, being your Linda McCartney to your Paul McCartney, right? Because that's exactly what Linda McCartney did for Paul McCartney. After the Beatles broke up, it was a really difficult time for Paul McCartney. And he was, struggling with writing songs and this show that I was hearing, they went into a lot more detail about what was happening at the time after they broke up. And there was a lot of legal battles going on between the Beatles, and they were, this super tight-knit group that then was completely disconnected. And I think, every one of them, there might have been a level of relief, but there also probably had to have been a level of grief, right, going on. And so she was the first person that heard many of Paul's post-Beatles music. And she was the one that would give honest, unfiltered feedback. She was the one that would also encourage him to keep going, and they've said that she was an invaluable creative partner to him during this difficult time. So it's such an important, if you are somebody's first audience, know how important and valuable you are to them. It just means so much. And so let's talk. So when I was, going down the rabbit hole of first audiences, there are first audiences, in music, in a whole bunch of different places. So I want to talk about some more musical first audiences. Yoko, because I'm a John Lennon fan, Yoko Ono to John Lennon. So John Lennon said that he would often go to Yoko with his, new ideas. He'd play them for her. And it was kind of her, she had this real conceptual way of thinking that led him to push the boundaries into more experimental territories with his music as he had never had before. And that's the power of the first audience, right? June Carter Cash to Johnny Cash. She was the one who really helped him create this stage presence and helped his sound as well. She, he credits her for that. And Beyonce will often go to Jay-Z with her unfinished tracks and give and receive feedback on tone and structure and emotional impact. And I think they do that for each other. They're each other's muses. So beyond music, you can think about like writing. So Nora Ephron, who I'm a big fan of, she wrote When Harry Met Sally and Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail and many articles. And she's just was an amazing, amazing writer. And she had her sister Delia Ephron as her first audience because she often would read early first drafts from Nora, and she, as her first reader, but as also as her collaborator on several screenplays. Christopher Nolan and his brother Jonathan Nolan. So I didn't know this, but Jonathan Nolan, his sort of magic is that he comes up with these amazing ideas and then he'll give those very rough ideas to his brother Christopher, who then will turn them into award-winning, films. Greta Gerwig and Barbie fame and Noah Baumbach, who are partners and in relationship or whatever, but they always, before they send any of their work to another collaborator, they collaborate together first as each other's first reader, first audience, refining voice, sharpening the writing, finding the emotional clarity that helps with their screenplays. And so, and then another really famous one is George Lucas and Steven Spielberg often will share rough cuts of movies and things. And it was Steven Spielberg who was one of the very first people to see Star Wars and very much encouraged George Lucas to keep going. And so there's that encouragement with a first audience that comes from a first audience, right? And in the literary world, we have Tabitha King. I don't know if you've heard this, but Stephen King's wife found a screenplay or the script for Carrie in the trash. She pulled it out, first reader, first audience, and then told him he needed to finish it. And of course, that really launched his career. And J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were part of a group called the Inklings, I think, and they were in Oxford. And they would, in this group, and there were others in there as well, but they would be the first readers and the first audience for these writers. And James Baldwin was one of the very first people to read and encourage Maya Angelou's award-winning story, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So amazing, right? When you think of all these famous partnerships. And even in the business world, you had Steve Jobs' wife, Lorene Powell Jobs. He would go to her. So he had all these amazing ideas, right? But she would bring some of the human-centric narrative behind where he was going with his ideas. That, balancing out this amazing marketing mind, but then bringing in the human to it. And Gayle King has famously been Oprah Winfrey's first audience, for all kinds of things, for speeches and scripts and big decisions. So it is, big decisions, right? Having someone to, that sits there as your first audience and lets you bounce your thoughts off of them, right? And kind of go from confusion to clarity. And Vanessa Nadal, who is heard early versions of Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamilton songs way before they reached the stage. And it's, it's not just the music, but just the writings of where that was going to be going, right? And so when I was listening to this on the radio and I was thinking about, the power of the first audience, I realized that as a career coach, um, that career coaches are really your first audience in your career. They are the ones that will hear your like mock interviews. There's a reason we have mock interviews, right? They get to hear your interview responses before you've really found your rhythm and help you get that rhythm, right? They will listen to your elevator pitch even though it's messy and while it's still messy and help you to get it to clean it up, and that of course builds your confidence. They will review your resume and LinkedIn profile before you put them public or share them with anyone or apply to any jobs. They'll rehearse. This is one of my favorite things to do as a coach, is they help you rehearse your ask. Like if you're asking for a promotion or asking for a raise or asking for the job, right? That you can rehearse what you're going to say and how you're going to position yourself ahead of time before you're in it for real, so that you work through the kinks, right? You stress test your presentations. I was just doing that this week with one of my clients who was preparing for a presentation. We were literally going through the deck, and I was able to say, this confuses me, or, there's, maybe some data here to back that up, things like that, where again, it's like when I'm writing the blog in my head, I think start to finish, it's pretty darn amazing. And then I get it out of my head on paper, and then I let someone else or my spiritual muses soak it in. And they're like, not so much, Lori, keep going. Right. And so, and if another thing actually this week with another client was around she's getting ready for a big, it's a sales pitch really with a customer that the company she works for has been circling, with back and forth for quite a while now, but never had any closed business. And so we were talking about that pitch and how to position things differently than perhaps they had before. Like obviously it hadn't been working. So what were they doing, and what did you want to keep in, but there or need to keep in? And then we also very much talked about mindset, because how you're thinking, if you have a first audience, someone that you can say, well, here's how I'm thinking about this. Here's how I'm thinking about myself as I walk into this. And we refine that and come up with some more powerful thoughts, it can change everything. So in your career, in general, every great creator, if you're creating a career path for yourself, a great career, if you're creating the next award-winning, Oscar-winning movie or New York Times bestseller, or just your resume and your LinkedIn profile, every person, we're all creating something, and every creator needs a first audience. They need that person who hears the unfinished, sort of cheesy first version of your half-formed, and in my case, half-baked ideas, so that you can become more powerful, more present, more effective when you go wide, when you go live with all of that. So in your career, your coach is that person for you. The person who helps you shape your career, the person that helps you build a great career narrative, the person that can confidently shepherd you into the next step on your career path. And that's a real privilege. Now I might cry, but that for me, sometimes speak for myself, but sometimes I'm like, am I making a difference? Is what I'm doing, does it matter to people? Especially in times like we're in right now, and I see some really, I see people like putting their lives in danger to help people, and I think, is what I'm doing enough, right? But then I recognize, even as I was saying this right now, that it's a real privilege to be able to be your first audience, to be able to um, help you become more of who you are, and to express that and align that with your work, your form of service in the world. And when you're doing that, everything is going to, it can't help but get lifted up and impact even this most scariest parts of our world right now will be impacted by this little, I just have to believe that, by these little generous, kind, hopeful things that we're doing for each other. And my part is right now is to be your first audience. So if you're interested in that, follow the QR code. But no matter what, join Career Alchemy Academy. Okay, no matter what, find a first audience for yourself, and find that person that's going to encourage you, that person that's not going to judge you, that person that's going to support you to confidently follow your career dreams, and so that you can then ripple out this confident, engaging, service focused energy in the world. And wherever we're at, we can have that sort of positive impact. I had no idea this is where we were going to go today on the blog or on the live here, but that's where we went. And I don't think it was me. I feel the muses were in charge right now and talking through me so that you heard all this, because it absolutely was not written down in my notes, but here we are. So I'm, again, so grateful for those of you who show up here, for if you watch the recording, for all of you that I've worked with in the past, all of you that I've been able to be your first audience. And I also want to thank all of my first audiences: my husband, my mom, my dad, my stepdad, my siblings, my friends, and my bosses and my colleagues. Just thank you for being my first audience and helping me to continue to have the courage to follow my dreams. So I wish that for all of you as well. Have a great day and stay warm. And I'll talk to you next week. Same place, same time ish. We'll be at 1 o'clock Central Time next week here on these channels.